seen me a couple times.
Thank you, Senator. Would you mind at least just reading the analysis to us one more time, just for the public's general?
Not at all. So thank you, everyone, for the record. My name is Senator Rebecca Perkins Coca. I represent District 21. I'm the prime sponsor of SB 597. I want to make sure that you guys all also have a copy of Amendment 20260319S, which incorporates some changes we made to the bill after some conversations with both Eversource and Unitil to try to incorporate some pieces there. And I'm certainly open to further conversation on the bill.
Did you want to go over the amendment with us?
Sure. And of course, it's been about a week since I put it in. So what we wanted to do was insert some study of sort of how electricity is procured, just because I think a little bit broader authority in terms of being able to use some more sophisticated financial tools would allow us some better protection for the ratepayers. So that's starting, let's see, on line 36 of page 2. And then sorry, I guess I'm working backwards. I started at the back and going back to section 4, which begins on line 24, page 1. Essentially, what we're trying to do is reflect the fact that there has been a docket opened at the PUC that relates to performance-based rate making and sort of how that incentive mechanism would work to help our utilities engage in sort of proactive upgrades of the infrastructure. You know, again, as a reminder, this is sort of the first year they're going to go through integrated distribution planning, which is sort of like a 3-year CUP for the grid. And so these criteria, starting on page 1, would really sort of help inject into the rate making process further incentives to kind of make sure that capital equipment is lining up with technology advances in the grid. And I'm happy to go into that as much as it's helpful. And then we've also incorporated sort of an inflation adjuster in section 3 on the rate cap. So again, the intent of this is just to provide some protection to our consumers in terms of electricity rate making. We all know electricity bills are a big issue these days. And so having worked in other states on energy grids, that, you know, I'm just trying to kind of help bring some guidelines in here that will help our grid keep up.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Waters, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. So I'll speak to the amendment, I suppose. So the trigger mechanism here with the 4% over inflation, in some ways, you don't really need to have a trigger to authorize this kind of performance-based rate making, right? I mean,
That's right.
That's
Senator.
not in itself necessary.
It's not in itself necessary, but we also know that consumers are facing just rising costs everywhere, and so part of the intent here is to have a way to sort of use the carrot to drive utilities to engage in it. Yeah.
I could follow up. Yeah, and then on the starting at the bottom of page 1 of your amendment, you have the performance incentive mechanisms, and you know, I agree with you that we've seen around the country, and even in some regards here, and previous examples of working utilities, that you offer performance-based incentives and they work.
Mm-hmm.
So would you mind just talking through the list you have here of A through I, and just, you know, for the ones you want to highlight about why each of these might save some money?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So the docket that just got opened at the PUC and the previous docket, what they considered for criteria for performance are customer service and reliability, which are very important. But I think we also want to make sure we're looking at criteria that will, to your point, Senator, over time continue to lower costs. So we want that performance to consider, you know, electricity rate affordability and volatility, making sure we're using all of the assets that we have, sort of in an optimized manner. As you said, here's maintenance and improvement of reliability, peak load reduction attributable to demand response programs. So this is essentially at times when there's going to be the most demand for electricity, for example, in the middle of the day in the summer, making sure that we have sort of a grid that can handle storage solutions and sort of bring different sources of generation onto the grid so that we can keep supply, sort of level with demand. Rapid integration of distributed energy resources. So this again would be allowing for different sources of energy to come on to the grid to create competition for rates so that that competition can sort of benefit the ratepayer. Timely execution of competitive procurement and third-party interconnection. So that's looking around the country, seeing what other states are doing on interconnection and making sure that when new sources of generation want to come online, they really can get to the grid and get interconnected, which again helps create that competition. Time of use rates and other demand flexibility strategies. This would be sort of a, like surge rate type concept so that people are able to get the power they need, but they're also incentivized to use power smartly. And so therefore, sort of less generation means less costs to get power to the grid. Customer engagement and satisfaction is obviously helpful. Public access to utility system information, including but not limited to public access to electricity system planning data and aggregated customer energy usage data. So this would allow, sort of power generators to participate in helping meet demand of the customers over time if that data was available. Fair compensation for utility employees. Obviously, we want to make sure this remains a good job for folks to have that can support a family. And then grid modernization, which I know, Senator, you've done a lot of work on, but again, is just this idea that in today's world, there are two-way technologies. So we have storage and potentially, electric cars and other technologies that are able to kind of send to the grid and take from the grid. And so making sure that our grid is physically and technologically capable of participating in that market is some of the intent of grid modernization. Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks. And, I think that regardless of the overall planning, and what people think about this approach, it's clearly each one of these would fulfill the objective of the legislature and the PUC and saving consumers money. And just before the next question, just to note, over the last few days, it was certainly highly noticed that the price of power at certain peak times in Maine was about $40 and it was $272 over here. Mm-hmm. And, they did bring on 1,600 megawatts of renewable energy. And then also its transmission issues. So, there's no question that this works and that any of this does. There's no question that it would work. But could you, the final piece of this I think worth talking through is, I think, you really get to the heart of it with the TOTEX system here that just, how are we considering justifiable costs and recoverable costs and the way in which we look at the justification of those as what would incentivize the things you've listed above. So if you could just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, what we have now is that we've enabled the utilities to collect different rates of return on their operating expenditures and their capital expenditures. And so we want to align those. And so TOTEX as a concept, is that both capital and operating expenditures are able to earn that rate of return. And therefore, instead of just continuing to operate, we're able to sort of see that return on investment on these sort of forward-looking, potentially really efficient and cost-saving measures.
So if I just make, just to clarify, I mean, of course, we want the utilities to make investment in transmission and other things. Mm-hmm. So would this, in fact, incentivize smart and continuing investment in things like grid modernization and so forth, which we pretty desperately need?
It would direct capital to creating those modernization pieces that would ultimately save money. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rosenwald. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. I'm interested in letter G of section 4. So, line 3 of page 2.
Yeah.
In my conversations with Eversource, they have said that as their current meters reach their end of life starting in 2028,
Mhm.
they would begin replacing them with what I call smart meters.
Smart
but
meters,
they
yeah.
call AMI.
AMI, yep.
Is that your understanding that that is Eversource's plan as well?
Yeah, and actually, I've had a really good conversation with the utility. There are some concerns. There are some limited concerns here, but for the most part, what's reflected here is reflected in their business plans. So again, I'm happy to have sort of a full conversation about that with anyone who wants to get into it in more detail. But I think that in terms of what makes sense for the utility's own assets and their forward planning, moving into smart meters, which are able to sort of do this different rates at different times of day, that is a capital investment, but it is also something that they would hopefully realize return on as the rates were able to sort of be flexible and adjust here. So I think it's something their business model intends to move into.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Waters?
Follow up on that. Isn't it the case, though, that right now, if these meters have a 20-year lifespan,
Mm-hmm.
that right now, if there's new construction, Eversource is installing the old style of meters, which should be there for 20 years?
Yes, that's correct, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
Okay, thank you very much.
Josh Elliott? The Department of Energy, and large book in his hand.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Josh Elliott, Director of the Division of Policy and Programs of the New Hampshire Department of Energy. If I understand correctly, I believe the amendment that the prime sponsor had offered was different than the one from last week, so I had prepared testimony on.
Do you have a copy of this one right now?
Can you tell me the last 4 digits of the amendment?
0326?
Okay, down I do have the same.
Right.
Okay. So I have 2 letters going out. One is speaking about the bill as introduced, and then one is as the amendment. I wasn't sure what the committee was going to consider, so I did for both. The department is neutral on the bill. I think there are a couple of issues with the bill just in terms of how it is structured, in terms of sort of like the details of how this is supposed to be executed. And I've gone through in each letter and sort of outlined each one of them. I will keep my remarks to the amendment, just given that that seems to be the direction that we're going in here. In paragraph 3, so new section C, so the amendments line 19 through 22, require any electric utility that exceeds the previous year rate by more than 4% after adjusting for inflation. Couple of things just built within that. The year period is not defined, right? The utilities go out and do default service procurement for rate setting in February and then August. So there's some clarity. With absent any clarity, we would assume a calendar year. So if we wanted to sync up with the actual default service procurements, there would need to be some adjustments there. Rate adjusting for inflation, I'm assuming usually it's referred to. Sometimes there's specificity in terms of the CPI that's included. That is not defined here, nor is it who's actually making that call as to whether or not this is triggered or not. Based on my reading of it, it does not seem to it just seems to be over the entire rate by just saying rate. So we assume that's both the energy portion, transmission, and distribution charges across the board. Now, performance-based rate making, right, based on how the utilities do things, that has nothing to do with how default service or the energy itself is procured. So you could see dramatic fluctuations in the price of electricity just because of wholesale markets. But that has nothing to do with the distribution side of the grid, right? So there's a you could see this being triggered in a circumstance where the utility is doing everything correctly, depending on how you define correct, on the distribution side of how they run the shop. And then you have because of wholesale market changes, right, that this then gets triggered. Going through the list of different performance incentive mechanisms. So again, I think we sort of had a little bit of a discussion about this. These are essentially financial ways of incenting the utility to do something that's beyond sort of the normal cost of service rate making that is traditionally done in the state. Essentially providing mechanisms, setting targets, and then providing financial incentives in order to meet them. As part of that process, you can also do something that's called step increases. So essentially the rate will increase slowly over time. There's a policy question. Do you want to make it easier to raise rates, right? Would you rather have that go slowly over time? Or would you rather have these sort of maybe more or less dramatic increases, but then there's more scrutiny on it?
So just on that point,
Yes.
just for the public edification. So generally those rates, you get this lull of, right, for years. And then all of a sudden, well, we've had to do all these, improvements, and those improvements have a cost associated with them. But over that period of time, all of a sudden, now all this is in, now comes the bill. And people are like sticker shocked because, holy cow, what just happened? Well, rather than that being taken place over, 10 years, maybe 20 years, or I don't know what the rate, what.
Usually it's about 5 years, but the
5 years.
utility can decide when they want to come in. Yes.
So in 5 years you go, oh my gosh, look at my bill, look what happened. Rather than doing it that way with this big, surcharge, what you just said was maybe incrementalize it in that process of the 5 years, right?
So there is a mechanism, it's not specifically spelled out, but one of the aspects of performance-based rate making, they can include these what are called those step adjustments. So there's gradual increase over time. There's a policy question of that, right? Do you want to make it easier to raise rates, or would you rather have this sort of shock of when there's that, hey, we need to do something here. We have to make hard decisions rather than, sort of the analogy of boiling the frog, right?
And it's hard for people to plan on that sticker shock process versus, well, I know it's going to probably go up, say, 2% or 3% or 4% or whatever it is.
There are pluses and minuses to both structures. Yes.
Yeah, it's a drag that it keeps going up, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. So in each of these different performance incentive mechanisms that is line 27 following, there's there's some tension in some of these. There's also not a clear explanation as to which should take priority, right? So we have right out of the gate, I'll use the example, right? Electric rate affordability and volatility risk, right? There's an inherent tension in that. You could have zero volatility, but your rates would be higher, right? We talk about various structures. We've talked about laddering, whether you have longer term contracts, and there's a risk premium that's built into those, right? Just by a mere factor of saying, hey, we're going to offer you this rate for, from a supplier for, 5 years, but then they take the risk of what happens to the price of natural gas, what happens to the price of a variety of other technologies, right? They take on that risk, so there's that risk premium that's built into the rate, so you'll pay more. You could have lower rates, but there's a balance between affordability and volatility, right? So you could have, which the PUC has directed to do spot purchases, rather than sort of longer terms, 6-month contracts, to see how that works in terms of reducing the price of electricity and see rather than building in rather than paying for that risk premium, right? Is there a way to get around that or to have lower rates, or is the risk premium actually worth what we're paying for it? And there's a number of reviews that are underway at the PUC to sort of evaluate that. But there's a tension there, right? You could have zero volatility, but it's more expensive. So looking at this as the PUC would, how do you pick between those two things, right? Does one take precedent over the other? Even looking at some of the other ones, just within all the way through K, J, fair compensation for utility employees. I don't know how that deals with price. Does that mean you pay them more? I'm not saying that people shouldn't get paid appropriately, but would there be an incentive then that are provided by the ratepayers to pay utility employees more? On grid modernization, I know there was some brief discussion about that, right? Is it grid modernization just for the sake of, hey, we have the newest, nice, shiny thing that we can say that our grid is the most up to date and has all these technologies and all these ability that nobody uses, right? You can say we have it, but if nobody uses it, right, is there anything that's, providing value there to the ratepayer? And that's, I think, sort of hearing from prime sponsors' comments that's sort of a drive behind this, right? Provide that downward pressure, an attempt on downward pressure on prices. There's also some confusion within this section here, right? If you're going from paragraph 3, right, it's telling the commission to go out and do all these things, and then you have this change on page 2, line 10, talking about an investigative proceeding, talking about each of these things. So it's not clear, are they doing it, or are they investigating how to do this, right? So that needs to be clarified. I'm going to talk a little bit about TOTEX, total expenditures, which is a different type of way of rate making. There is no example here in the United States that uses TOTEX rate making. There are some European jurisdictions that use it. There's some significant questions about whether or not TOTEX would violate GAAP principles, so essentially for accounting. Of how those are done. So anytime there's a financial audit or basically a record keeping of how you're keeping your accounts. So in terms of, I know there's some discussion in there about, comparing it to other states or other jurisdictions, right? There are no state in the United States, no jurisdiction within the United States has actually implemented this. And essentially, right, as part of that, you'd have, as the prime sponsor spoke to, right, you have the total expenditures, and then you have to pick a number, right, of what the rate of return is. And then you have to pick a ratio between capital expenditures and operating expenditures as to what that number you want to be is. So right now it's just on capital expenditures. Again, so it's an unproven methodology, at least here in the United States. Finally, on the procurement study committee, certainly not going to tell the legislature they can and can't review things that they wish to review. There's a lot of data that the PUC has done through other investigatory dockets or through your generic default service procurements or cost of gas procurements on the natural gas side of things, that there's plenty of information there. So, we'd certainly be happy to come in and help to explain those things. I would say just on page 3, line 1, it does says heating utility providers. Assume that's to mean natural gas. We don't have any heating utility providers in the state, so some additional definition around that. I've gone into far more detail in my letters. I didn't want to bore you with all the nitty-gritties in each of those pieces. So with that, I'm happy to hit the highlights and stop there and take any questions the committee may have.
So other than that, you like the bill?
Neutral.
Yeah, neutral.
It's the incumbent upon the department to point out if there are inconsistencies or flaws in the legislation, because at the end of the day, the department and the Public Utilities Commission have to implement this. And if there's inconsistencies in the statute, it's not clear what we're supposed to do.
Thank you. Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking at the amendment and going back and forth to it all. Section 3, Roman 3, essentially the way I read it, essentially allows a 4% rate increase above whatever inflation is. So built-in rate increase before the utility is subject to these performance metrics. Am I reading this right? Like they could have, let's say inflation is 8%, they could get a rate increase of 3% and not be subject to any performance metrics. But once they hit 4%, they would be. Is that the right number?
Cool.
Building in a 4% rate increase?
So that's a good question. So to answer the first part of your question, yes, that's how the mechanism would work. So if 8%, then you would get an additional 4% on top of that. However, the way that it is structured includes the price of electricity, which the utilities don't have any control over. So there's a question about whether or not you would want to hold them accountable for something that they don't have control over. There's also the question of, these performance mechanisms, right? They're not universally adopted. Some states do them, some states don't do them. But a poorly defined or a poorly written performance incentive mechanism is just a cash machine for the utilities if you don't do this right.
Butters?
Yeah, thanks. I'll open some of your comments. Well, let me start with the end first. The study committee, when we set up the Department of Energy, you all do a fair amount of policy work now. And could you, in a sense, just be tasked with writing a report that would cover lines 10 through 13?
We could. It would depend on how detailed you want us to get.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go back into the I mean, I hear what you're saying. Thanks so much for your comments about various factors of this. Do you think it would, if we take some kind of move towards performance-based and so on, and various incentivizing, do you think it would make sense to try to bifurcate the supply and a distribution side of each of those areas to have some more clarity? Because the supply issue is really quite different from what the utilities are doing in terms of distribution, grid and modernization, et cetera, metering.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. Thank you for the question. This bill almost contemplates vertical integration of where the utilities own the generation. At which point, yes, they would have control over the electricity supply thing. So if you were to do a performance-based rate making or performance incentive mechanism, you would want to focus it on just on the distribution side. Because that's the one thing that the electric distribution utilities have control over.
And just to follow up,
Yeah.
I mean, and there, we've had some other legislation previously, but in some ways, just to really focus that, we could move towards a kind of performance-based rate making just on the distribution side, which might do a lot of the things to bring down costs that we're looking at. Is that not the case?
It all depends on how it's designed. If you
Yeah.
have a very well-designed performance-based mechanism, right, based mechanism or a PIM, performance incentive mechanism, there is that downward pressure, right? In theory, if you have it designed correctly. However, we saw in the recent Eversource rate case, right, a poorly designed one or a poorly applied one is just giving money to the utilities.
Yeah. And if I just make a comment, I mean, I appreciate the governor's sharing our concerns about affordability and what's happening with electricity costs, because it's always slammed us, essentially slamming us again this year. And I appreciate the appointment of your colleague who's voiced those concerns. Wouldn't you see that some kind of move in this direction to really foreground affordability in terms of the rate making is something we probably would want to do?
Again, if it's designed correctly, right, and you have a whole slew of, I forgot, 11 different items, right? If it's just affordability, you have to narrow it, right? It has to just be one of those things, right? There's going to be an inherent tension between, if you have more than one of anything, right, there's the potential for conflict there. Again, if it's designed correctly, there is the possibility. If it's not designed correctly, a bad PIM is worse than, the worst that you could get from cost of service rate making.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Can you explain a little bit more about the TODEX, just a little bit why we don't use it in our country, but
Yeah, so it's there's an organization called the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is sort of a think tankish kind of entity that has been advocating for adoption of what's called TODEX in the United States as a rate making mechanism. So essentially, when you have, I'll try to be brief, you have two buckets when you're looking at utilities that revenue goes into or expenditures come into, right? You have capital expenditures, which are, poles and wires, transformers, substations, all those kinds of things. And you have operating expenditures, right, that will go into something like software systems or soft costs or things like that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that sort of falls in between. Actually, software is a good example of that. Is that a capital expense or an operating expense? And there's always, discussions in utility rate cases about where you draw that line. What's really a capital expenditure, which you get the opportunity to earn a rate of return on, and what's an operating expenditure, which you do not get an opportunity to earn a rate of return on. There's a theory that, based on that mix, rather than having the utility trying to, push as much items into capital expenditures or trying to shortchange operating expenditures, that you say, okay, we're just going to blend these two together and we're just going to pick a ratio. So if you had a normal rate case that came in, I'm just making up numbers here, it's 40% capital expenditure and 60% operating expenditures. And of course, you're trying to get that, the utilities would try to get that 40% as big as possible, right? Rather than have that whole discussion about what counts and what doesn't count, you basically just pick a number and say, okay, of your total expenditures, we're going to count 35% as capital, no matter if you actually spend 35% on capital or not. You could spend 40%, 50%, 60% on capital. It's not going to matter. You'll only get that opportunity to earn a rate of return on that 35. I'm sorry?
I'm talking to myself.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So it's a way to alleviate that sort of that tension that may or may not exist in terms of between capital expenditures and operating expenditures when you come in for a rate case. Again, I am not an accountant. I don't know all the details, but I know there are significant concerns around how doing such a mechanism would conflict with GAAP, which are government essentially the rules of the road that the government sets in terms of accounting that feeds into everything from for an investor-owned utility through financial statements, bond statements, things like that.
Thank you, Joshua. Any further questions? Seeing none, well done. Dina Dennis. Dina Dennis. Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh. See ya.
Sorry. Come on.
Have a good one. Dina. Thank you very much, Joshua.
Good morning, Chairman Avard, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Dina Dennis, representing the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. I did not get a copy of the amendment from last week or this week, so my testimony is going to focus on the bill as introduced. CPC&H is neutral on Senate Bill 597. We appreciate the sponsors for introducing this bill, and we're supportive of the concept of performance-based regulation, or PBR, as a way to better align utility incentives with broader societal goals like reliability, efficiency, affordability, and customer choice. I'll tailor my comments to make 4 brief points. First, we appreciate that the bill looks beyond just rates and considers total utility bills. Too often, energy debates focus narrowly on electric or gas rates, when what customers actually pay, their bills, is what matters. Utility bills include a number of charges, many of which are non-bypassable or unavoidable, regardless of how much or how little a customer uses. Second, while the list of performance areas in the bill as introduced is comprehensive, we believe that a key metric is missing, and that's how utility systems support a competitive market for power supply and related energy services. PBR should include how well utilities are enabling service providers, including community power aggregations and other competitive suppliers, to participate in the market. That includes areas like demand response, energy efficiency, renewable energy offerings, and other distributed energy programs. These services do not need to be utility controlled, and in many cases, competitive suppliers like CPC&H may be able to deliver them more cost effectively and innovatively. Metrics should consider how utilities are reducing barriers to market access. For example, whether they're providing accurate and interval usage and settlement data, or allowing competitive suppliers equal access to price signals that utilities use for providing their own distributed energy and energy management programs and services to their customers. Third, we are appreciative of the inclusion of a TOTEX-based rate making However, we think it should be paired with real accountability. TOTEX can help, as you heard, I think, from Josh and others, can help neutralize the utility's inherent preference for capital investments or CapEx, where they earn a return over operational expenses, which is simply a pass-through. That can support more holistic planning and innovation. However, TOTEX alone is not sufficient. If these kind of models are pursued, they should be paired with strong enforceable performance metrics so that utilities do not underinvest in operational improvements that support, among many things, market functionality and competition, such as the billing systems, customer data access and sharing systems, and load settlement systems. And then more broadly, PBR works best, and to borrow a phrase from Mr. Elliott and the consumer advocate, when we're not simply giving away free money to utilities. Effective PBR frameworks must be symmetrical, must include symmetrical incentives and penalties, which means that utilities should be rewarded for meeting or exceeding the performance targets set, but also face meaningful consequences when they fail to do so. And then fourth and lastly, we do have concerns with Section 3's approach to limiting rate increases. This Section 3 would prohibit the PUC from approving an energy rate that increases by more than 4% above the inflation year over year. We have a number of concerns. I'll just highlight a few. First, it's unclear what the bill means by an energy rate. Is it referring to the energy supply rate, the distribution rate, to transmission-related charges, or some other component of a customer's bill? Each of these is governed differently, driven by different cost drivers, and reviewed under different regulatory standards, some at the state level, some at the federal level. And we think this ambiguity alone could create significant implementation and legal challenges. Second, artificially constraining rate increases through statute can produce unintended consequences. Hard caps can discourage prudent investments, encourage cost deferral, can distort market competition, and can push utilities toward higher fixed charges or alternative rate design changes that ultimately shift costs rather than reduce them. As it relates to the energy supply charge, this would be even more acutely felt, as currently the electric distribution utilities are required to procure 50% of their small customer load from the spot market. And obviously the markets fluctuate. There's a certain number of volatility. I think in the last month we've seen significant discrepancy between the day ahead and the real-time market. So this would be disastrous. It would create a number of under-collected balances that would need to be reconciled and would need to be reconciled on a cost-causer basis. So in closing, actually I have one more point. So lastly, about this across-the-board cap, we think it risks undermining the very goals of PBR, which is about aligning incentives with outcomes and not substituting legislative ceilings for regulatory judgment. The PUC already has the authority to and responsibility to scrutinize rate increases and protect customers. So such a rigid statutory cap may limit that discretion in ways that are counterproductive over the long term. So in closing, we're encouraged to see the Senate and this committee explore mechanisms like PBR. And when designed well, with clear metrics, symmetrical incentives, and attention to market competition, these approaches can help meet the needs of New Hampshire in the short and long term. We'd welcome the chance to participate in a working group or whatever the committee deems is most appropriate for next steps. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Alec O'Meara, our final speaker. Oh, we got another one. Alec? From Unitil?
From Unitil. Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Alec O'Meara.
Did you get a copy of the amendment?
I did, yes. I was able to see it. So for the record, my name is Alec O'Meara, Director of External Affairs at Unitil. We do oppose the bill with the amendment, though I acknowledge that the amendment I do feel is an improvement over the original text of the bill. Little bit of background in terms of where we stand in terms of our overall rate structure. Currently, Unitil does not have a performance-based rate structure in New Hampshire. We did propose, we have an active rate case right now before the Public Utilities Commission. It does not include performance-based rate structure. That said, we do have a performance-based rate structure currently active in Massachusetts. So overall, as a company, we are agnostic towards the idea of performance-based rates. We see them as a tool that can be helpful to accomplish certain goals that the regulatory body or policymakers have in a given state. I think that the way Community Power put that is very apropos. The purpose of performance-based rates or incentive-based rates in general is the idea of tailoring the rate structure to match what the policy goals may be of whomever is trying to set that policy. So that is really the best way to look at what rate making is trying to accomplish when you start talking about incentive-based rates and performance-based rates. The trouble with that, and the trouble with making that process a little too prescriptive, is you can end up tailoring a suit that might not fit everyone you want to put in that suit. So all the pieces that you may have in terms of what makes sense for a good incentive-based or performance-based rate structure for one utility might not be exactly the same structure that you may want to accomplish with another utility. Maybe one utility is better at something than the other is. So you want to maybe incentivize different pieces of that, or not consider a piece altogether, or maybe make it all about one. So from our perspective, the proceeding that the Public Utilities Commission has opened to look at this topic and come up with what might be the right format or style to consider performance-based rates is the most appropriate way to go forward. Our preference, and in our mind, we pair this bill with, I believe it was 593, the bill that will to remove all performance-based or incentive-based rate making. Our preference would be to just let the process continue with the Public Utilities Commission and have them come forward with something that makes sense for New Hampshire in terms of incentive-based rate making. I will also reiterate what was said by the Department of Energy. It is accurate. We aren't in control of every piece of our rates. Supply rates have, by and large, been the most volatile piece of rates over the past several years. That's the one that goes up and down the most. That's the piece that is most likely to trigger something that goes outside of the inflation-based cap that was mentioned in the bill. So we would potentially be placed in a position where we would be asked to go into a performance-based rate through no action of our own, simply because that's what supply rates have done over the past 6-month or 12-month period. So our preference would be for us to look at this bill, allow the PUC to go forward with their process, and ensure that when performance-based rate mechanisms are considered, the regulators have the discretion to be able to design that program in a way that best fits an individual utility. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Senator Rosenwald.
Following up on Senator Waters' question to the DOE about kind of meters that Eversource is installing. What is Unitil doing as you're installing new meters? Are you installing AMIs?
Yes, we are. In fact, we've begun our rollout of AMI infrastructure. Let me take a step back on that. Unitil has had advanced metering infrastructure in place since 2004. We were the first utility in New Hampshire to have such meters. If you're a Unitil customer, you would see on your bill, there would be daily use shown. That first generation advanced metering infrastructure is reaching end of service. So we're in process of putting in new advanced metering that's going to be able to provide even more granular information about an individual customer's use. And from our perspective, the ability for a customer to be able to see their usage data in a more granular way helps them better control their energy costs. So we're beginning that in our capital region here in the Concord area. We're switching out meters as we speak. We expect to get through the capital area this year, and then we'll be moving to our Seacoast region in 2027.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Waters.
Thank you for your thoughtful testimony. And I want to circle back to something that I also want to follow up on the metering. Question. Clearly, those kinds of meters allow you to work with, industry and other large users to help deal with peak demand.
Yes. So we call the metering and the technology they open, it's a foundational technology. I think that's the best way to think of it. Having these smart meters in place, and I try not to use the term smart meters because it's an overly broad term, but it's the one everyone uses. Having them in place allows an individual customer to have the technology in place at their home to take advantage of a host of different opportunities. Yes, demand response would be one potential option, working with third parties that might be able to utilize them. Not every customer wants every piece of that, but every customer wants some piece of an ability to understand it. We live in the information age. People want good information. It's like we all have smartphones. Maybe all of our smartphones don't do everything we want them to do, but we have that capability to be able to tailor it to what we want. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
And if I could follow up, Mr. Chairman, so
Yep.
kind of using that to circle back to the issue of supply, because isn't it the case that, of course, the price of supply, and it is, national, international determinations and so on and so forth.
yeah.
But there's a difference between the rate and also the usage, so that whatever the supply is costing, you have a lot of opportunities, don't you? Whether it's through the metering, distributed energy resources,
Time of use
grid
rates.
enhancement, and all these kinds of ways to actually mean that no matter what the cost of it is, if you use less, you save money.
That's correct. And that's a big message we have for our customers. If you go to our website, one of the things we try and outline for customers, and we kind of think holistically in this manner of what is it you're trying to accomplish with your energy usage and what tools are going to be best available for you. So time of use rates was what I thought of as you were bringing up examples. That could be something a customer is interested in. Are you interested or willing to shift a lot of your usage to, say, off-peak times or overnight hours? If so, we can create a designer rate that'll have a lower rate for you during that period that you could potentially take advantage of. Energy efficiency programs, through New Hampshire Saves. That's another one that we emphasize for folks. And I think moving the conversation away specifically from rates to bills, I think that concept was brought up again. This idea of what can we do to help our customers take control and advantage of their energy usage as a whole and find savings in that manner. So I think that's kind of a big way we look at energy usage and how we try and talk about it with our customers.
So just my last one,
Final
Mr.
one,
Chairman.
please.
Yeah. So that, in a sense, if it were the policy of the legislature to create performance-based rate making, that would reduce the supply, the overall use of energy. That would be one of the best ways to use PBR to reduce costs to consumers.
I would defer to the legislature as to what they feel is, but performance-based rates are a tool one can use to incentivize something like that with utilities to try and accomplish a goal like that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Our final speaker, Mike Licata from Eversource. I'm going to ask you to be brief. On the next bill, if you haven't signed up now, you're not going to be able to put in a last second because I got 4 more bills to go through and I'm getting kicked out at 12 o'clock. So if you haven't signed up on a bill, you're not going to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Licata.
Don't all
from
get up at
Eversource.
once.
I'll be very, very brief. I don't want to be duplicative. We do appreciate the sponsor's intent. We do have concerns with the bill as written, as well as the amendment. Other speakers have talked about the difficulty and legal challenges of these artificial caps would create. A lot of the costs that would be capped are as Mr. Elliott said, outside of our control. And so you're creating essentially an unconstitutional taking if you say that we can't recover our prudently incurred costs. Just 2 other really quick points. One, agree with the statements of Mr. O'Mara. There is an investigative proceeding that will be starting at the Public Utilities Commission looking at these exact issues. We think that that's a more appropriate venue. Let's wait to see what the outcome of that is, and then whether it's this bill or Senate Bill 537, which was heard earlier, the legislature can weigh in when they have all the facts and the outcome of that PUC case. And then just finally, two more very, very quick things. One, we are a little concerned about the reference to Totex in the bill. All the statements of Mr. Elliott, I think, are accurate. This has not been adopted by any state in the country and has actually only been considered by two. And both of those states, Connecticut and Hawaii, determined not to proceed with it. Having it in the bill is something that the commission needs to evaluate, sort of puts a thumb on the scale. And then just finally, there have been references to our most recent rate case about utilities getting free money, and I just wanted to correct the record there. We are not getting free money, as the chairman pointed out. What the commission approved was sort of a multi-year allowance plan to try to smooth out rate spikes. All of our costs are always reviewed for prudency before they go into rate pace. So just wanted to kind of provide a little context there. So we do have concerns with this, support many of the comments that others said, and happy to work with the committee. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Mike. Appreciate it. We're going to close the hearing on this, and then we're going to hear from the prime sponsor of SB 594 FN. I got two sheets, okay. These are the only sheets I'm going to go by. So, don't you miss energy?
No.
And
Right.
we have a little sign up there that says 597, but that's inaccurate. Thank you. And so if that sign gets put up incorrect, we're going to hear from the prime
Do
sponsor.
you really have 2 pages for this bill? Oh,
My 2 pages.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I'm going to be brief because I have to be in the governor's office in 6 minutes. I am the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 594. And this bill, basically, this issue was brought to the attention by one of my constituents, and she is going to be testifying, I believe, on this. So this bill eliminates the use of agitators in instances where temporary docks have been removed from bodies of water. So what happened is apparently in the RSAs, we have a rule, RSA that requires lakes that are bodies of water that have less than 1,000 acres, their docks are considered temporary and they have to be removed. But what's not in there, because there have been times when people have left their docks in, even though they're supposed to be temporary, and they put agitators in there. So they are starting to implement take the docks out, but they're not. There's nothing in the law that doesn't require them to take their agitators out. And so this bill basically requires them, same thing with a temporary dock, if you're on less than 1,000 acres, then you have to take your agitator out. We do have a situation happening in Windham where an individual on a lake less than 1,000 acres was required to take his dock out, but then he basically said, well, I'm going to leave my agitator in just because I can. So this kind of closes that loophole. And we have had cases, and my constituent will show that her son fell through the ice, probably because of the thin ice of the agitator. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes. It's a quickie. So if you could still have an agitator if you have a boathouse.
If it's a permanent
If
structure.
it's legally attached to your shoreline, so to me, that's a boathouse. Are you required to have the agitator moved into the boathouse under this bill? Or
It says no.
would you have to install a new agitator that's in your boathouse?
Well, my understanding is if it's a boathouse, then it's a permanent structure and you can have an agitator. But if it's a temporary dock and it's at less than 1,000 acres, you have to remove that dock anyway. And then this includes the agitator in there.
Could it
Well,
So are there people who have two agitators, one inside the boathouse and one for the temporary dock? Or
I'm
is
seeing
the
the department
department
says-
going to
I'm
test?
seeing a nod, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll ask somebody else. 'Cause you're upset.
Okay,
You don't know.
I don't.
Any further questions?
Much better than energy.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Maria? Oh, pretty much, yeah. Maria. I'm sure you hear that all the time. Welcome. Hit your button.
There you go. Woo. So I just typed something up and I'll read it, and then if you guys have questions. My name is Maria. I've lived at Cobbitts Pond for the past 14 years. I'm here to testify about a serious public safety and environmental concern caused by contradictory New Hampshire statutes governing dock and use of agitators on small bodies of water. RSA 482 requires that docks on bodies of water under 1,000 acres be removed from the lake bed for 5 months each year. This requirement exists for clear safety and environmental reasons. However, RSA 270 permits the use of agitators that are devices that inhibit ice formation. In practice, these laws directly contradict one another and create a dangerous enforcement gap. If docks are required to be removed because they pose a safety risk in winter conditions, then devices whose sole purpose is to prevent ice formation around those docks should not be permitted on the same small bodies of water. This is not a theoretical concern. In the winter of 2024, a neighbor on Cobbitts Pond left his dock in the water and operated an agitator throughout the winter, a direct violation of RSA 482. Despite formal and repeated complaints to the Department of Environmental Services, no enforcement action has been taken to date. DES informed us that agitators fall outside of their jurisdiction and that dock complaints are low on their enforcement priority. Fishing Game responded multiple times, but could only ask the individual to reduce the agitator's output, which he repeatedly increased again after inspections. As a direct result of this ongoing hazard, my 11-year-old son went through the ice in February of 2025. Prior to this incident, my husband, who has lived on the lake his entire life and is knowledgeable about ice safety, performed more than 20 test drills confirming the ice was otherwise safe. The ice failure occurred in an area affected by the agitator's current. Thankfully, my son was safe, but the situation could have easily have resulted in fatality. Last year, a tragic drowning occurred on Big Island Pond, and many of the residents believe the use of the nearby agitators contributed to the unsafe ice condition. On Cobbitts Pond alone, I'm aware of multiple incidents where individuals have gone through the ice near docks with agitators. These devices create unpredictable weak spots, which are especially dangerous on small, congested lakes heavily used by families and children. Beyond safety concerns, there are environmental impacts. I personally observed a significant increase in aquatic weeds, and in my opinion, it correlates with the increased use of agitators. When lakes do not freeze naturally, invasive vegetation is not killed off during winter months. Agitators disrupt the natural freeze cycle and contribute to long-term ecological degradation. Agitators serve one purpose: to keep the water from freezing around docks. If docks are not legally permitted to remain in small lakes during winters, then these agitators should not be permitted either. Allowing both undermines the intent of RSA 482 and places residents at unnecessary risk. I'm respectfully requesting that New Hampshire law be clarified so that it does not contradict itself. Specifically, I urge that the use of agitators be prohibited on bodies of water under 1,000 acres where docks are required to be removed. This would protect public safety, preserve environmental integrity, and prevent further avoidable injuries or deaths. This is a preventable danger, and a solution is straightforward. Public safety should not be compromised for convenience.
Thank you for your testimony. Now, that used to be called Duncan Beach when I was a kid, right?
Yes, yes.
That ages me.
My kids are 5th generation on that pond, so, yeah.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
All right, thank you.
Tim, I don't have a song for you, but come on up. Anybody know a song named Tim? Why?
I don't.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the Natural Resources Committee. My name is Tim Dunleavy. I come before you this morning representing Marine Patrol and the Department of Safety. We do not have a stand on this bill. We are the enforcement agency for the enforcement of aquitherms and the prevention of ice around structures on our public waters. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Senator Waters. Of course.
Thanks for being here. And if this were enacted, this would cause no great difficulties for the department to enforce, would it?
No, Senator, it would not. That's a good question. We are currently the enforcement agency along with Fish and Game Department and even the locals if they have an emergency situation. So we're out there as it is addressing issues related to aquitherms.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When people have these aerators to protect their boathouse, does New Hampshire law contemplate where the boathouse is located? So they're allowed, if you have a boathouse that's subject to north moving ice, or can it be anywhere on a body of water that's over 1,000 acres?
Thank you, Senator. That's a good question. The size of the body of water has no bearing whatsoever on our current statutes or what you have before you today. An owner of a permanent structure who has aquitherms or bubblers on their waterfront are responsible for the amount of ice that is opened up. Current statute does not allow you to open up so much water that it impedes public access to the frozen body of water. Once the lake is frozen, it becomes a public way like Interstate 93. And so while there's a reasonable expectation to protect your permanent structures from ice damage, once you reach the boundaries of your property and only a reasonable amount along the frontage of that property, then and only then can we regulate how much water you're opening up. A lot of times there's an effort that's involved, and that's oftentimes where we have our biggest problems, is when we have absentee owners who plug these devices in and just let them run. And you have a January thaw, or you have a stretch of windy days where all of a sudden what little open water exists now becomes rather expansive, or currents travel along the shallow shoreline and open up maybe in a butter's ice formation. So those are the things that really we find from an enforcement perspective are necessary, and that's being attentive to and regulating these devices, whether they're on a timer, a thermostat, or constantly repositioning them. But we have every year multiple examples of where more water is being opened up, creating a hazard. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you all for
Appreciate
your
it.
time.
Our final speaker, Andrea. And if you have written testimony, could you just pass it in and talk from your heart? Because we can probably exec this right away.
Hello, I'm Andrea Lamoureux, President and Policy Advocate for New Hampshire Lakes. We're a statewide nonprofit organization working to restore and preserve all of our lakes. And we are here in support of this bill for the safety concerns that you've heard and also the ecological concerns. Unnecessarily opening up water on our lakes in winter can contribute to water quality problems, excessive plant growth, all things you've heard before. And I wanted to add that this is not an issue isolated to Cobbetts Pond. We represent lake associations throughout the state, and I know you've heard in your emails from our constituents it is a statewide issue. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
testimony. And with that, we're going to close the hearing. And is there a motion to move into exec? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there a motion on this bill 594? Senator Pearl says pass. Senator Rosenwald seconds that. Discussion? All in favor of ought to pass?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. And Senator McConkey said consent. Senator Pearl agreed, and Senator Rosenwald third that. So all in favor of consent?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Senator McConkey?
Yes, please.
Yeah. We'll take it out. Is there a motion to move out of exec?
So move.
All in favor? Aye. Now we'll hear from the prime sponsor of SB 595. And we're going to hear from our prime sponsor, the illustrious, the magnificent. There we are. 595. You are recognized, Senator.
Thank
Whenever
you,
you're
Mr.
ready.
Chairman. My name is Senator Keith Murphy, representing the people of
And-
North Manchester, Goffstown, Hooksett, Candia, Raymond.
You pull the microphone just a little bit closer to you because we want to hear every word.
How's that?
That's beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So the genesis of this bill is the following. I have a constituent who owns a campground. This constituent campground is required to submit historically quarterly water samples because it's classified as a non-community transient water system. I'm not sure how much detail you need on this, but we have community water systems that are basically municipal water systems. We have non-community transient, which are things like restaurants, hotels that doesn't serve the same people. And then we have non-community, non-transient, but things like factories and schools that serve the same people repeatedly. Anyway, he has a campground. He hired a manager. The manager was tasked with delivering the quarterly water samples to the water testing facility. And the manager forgot to do it a day late. And then 8 months later, again, did it, I think, 2 days late the second time. And poof, he found himself on a monthly, he was sentenced basically to monthly water testing. And then when he said, okay, I'll just take it over myself, I did it himself. And years have gone by and he's still on a monthly testing schedule. And so when he talked to DES, he talked to Ms. Davis over at DES, and he was told, well, you have to pay to have a certified water engineer come out and inspect your system, and then you can go back to quarterly testing. And so that was why the bill was filed. Now, I have had several conversations with DES, and I passed out a copy of the letter. I think you all received one earlier, but now you've got another one right in front of you. And essentially says, look, we do this because the federal government makes us do this. And if we don't do it, the EPA will, and they'll be harder than we will. And that may very well be true. But I did pull up the citation, the EPA regulations. And if you look at paragraph 4, because I think if we did this, I think this whole thing goes away. For the purposes of determining eligibility for remaining on or qualifying for quarterly monitoring, and I'm going to skip ahead a sentence, the state may elect to not count monitoring violations if the missed sample is collected no later than the end of the monitoring period following the period in which the sample was missed. So basically, if you hand it in a little late, it's okay. You can skip it. You can call it good. And we don't do that. So the federal government allows us to be a bit lenient, and we're not. So the bill is drafted. I agree, does not meet the federal regulations, and would need to be amended if the committee is willing to. If you'd rather, I'm happy to put the amendment in, Mr. Chairman, but we should be following, in my opinion, paragraph 4. If you hand in a sample a day or two late, you shouldn't be required to do monthly monitoring. And that's my position, and that's my constituents' position. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Brandon? It doesn't say whether you support or oppose. So you're ambivalent.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Brandon Kernan. I'm the administrator of the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau at the Department of Environmental Services, and we just want to follow up and provide information on this bill. We are tasked with administering both the state and federal Safe Drinking Water Act, and for the most part, the state Safe Drinking Water Act and the associated regulations are 95% federal requirements that we're implementing. And we just have concerns about this bill because, as proposed, it would be inconsistent with the federal regulation, and water systems would still have to continue sampling the way they are right now. It would just be another jurisdiction to enforce it other than the department. One thing I did talk with the sponsor about, and we are following through on, is you do get relief from that monthly sampling requirement after you have that inspection, and the department does provide a lot of technical assistance. And so we are having a staff person go out to that campground to do the inspection, so they don't have to pay somebody, an independent operator, to go do that. And that's just something that's really important with our bureau. Even though we are the regulator and ultimately have to enforce, I think the water industry would tell you we're partners. You know, we work with them. We rely on them to do the work and submit the data. And so where we have hardships like this, we do go out and help them out. And so that will occur in this case. But our primary concern is that we need to be consistent with federal regulations. Otherwise, there'll just be another jurisdiction enforcing that aspect of it.
Thank you for your testimony. Just a dark question. Would you have inspected it if we hadn't had a piece of legislation? I mean, it's kind of a crappy question, but you know, it's one of those things where, well, from what I heard in the testimony, you know, there was going to have to be a fee that was going to be paid, and now we have a bill. So now it feels as though cooperation is happening, if you will, and the flexibility is now implemented. Are you working with other people that are going through this situation as well?
We do provide that technical assistance. We're not staffed up to do it in every single case. That could be 50 inspections a year, but it's commonplace when someone describes to us a hardship and we have someone in the region doing routine inspections already, because we do go to these facilities every 5 years and we have 2,500 of them throughout the state, water systems. We do provide that assistance. We started engaging the sponsor back in October about the nature of this bill. I don't think it was till yesterday that the entity concerned was really willing to make itself known to us and engaged us. We didn't have an opportunity to be more proactive until yesterday when we learned of what facility had this concern and what assistance we could provide.
Questions from Senator McConkey?
Thank you, sir, for being here. I'm surprised by the need for this. I have been a New Hampshire permitted operator for 20, 30 years, and I've run the second largest water system in the town of Ossipee, and I luckily handle much smaller facilities, brew pubs and so forth, much nicer gig at this point in time. I have been on the side of this individual that missed a water sample, you know, by a day, and have had to monitor monthly for I think typically a year's time, and then ask for relief from that, and have never had to, unless this is a recent policy, I've never had to then forego a inspection of my system that I was working in, and was told if I were to make a second mistake that might be the case. I'm surprised, is this a new policy by you folks? I've always found your department eager and willing to help those, because so many of these small systems, campgrounds and things are seasonal, and it's a mom and pop operation. Is there some reason this went on so long?
Yes, and I think I can explain why you didn't have to have that inspection done in your case. So we have community water systems that are inspected by the state every 3 years, unless there's a special problem. And then we have the non-community and the transient water systems that are inspected every 5 years. If our inspection occurs within 12 months of that violation, that covers the inspection that you would add hire an operator for. But in that a campground's transient, and we are only out there every 5 years, they're probably outside that 12-month before or after the violation occurred window, and therefore that operator had to complete that special inspection. So our scheduled inspections count in lieu of hiring someone if they happen to occur.
If I could, sir. Without getting too technical or in the weeds here, was this a simple water test? Is this that they missed?
Just a bacteria sample, yes, $20, $30 sample, that is routine for transient water systems.
So it's not like, if I could, sir, it's not like they had a hit that was bad, that caused more concern by the department. You need to resample, you need to come in. It's just simply that they missed a sample. It seems outrageously stringent that the department would then take that action and then stand on your seat and say, we're not coming out to you for 4 more years or 5 more years. I'm set back by it. It is not something that I've ever come to expect from this department. And perhaps we do need to move forward with this legislation, and your folks need to work this out. And I don't see the EPA coming in and taking away all of our funding.
Senator Waters?
I don't know there's a question there, and I apologize, sir.
Oh, I'll take it. I need some sunlight. Any further questions?
If I could, there's
Yes.
kind of a question there.
Yeah.
So our department doesn't stand on a chair and take a stance that we're not going to assist. In this case, once we were able to access the entity, we readily offered to provide assistance. Again, we're not staffed to do that, and that could be changed. The budgets are changed, but we do, it's commonplace to go out and provide technical assistance, and it's kind of case by case right now. But I think the industry would tell you that we are partners with them and don't act like we're, police or dictators to them so much.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions? Seeing none, if I can call the senator back up. I just have one question, Senator. I thought you said something about an amendment, possibly?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. If you look at the EPA regulations that I handed out,
Yeah.
my suggestion would be that if we took paragraph 4.
On the first page?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And we basically condensed that into an amendment that had the DES essentially grant a week or 2 or a small amount of grace for turning in a late sample, because we have that authority in these regulations, that a lot of these issues would be avoided.
Would you be
Right now, if you turn it on June 31st, you're on time. You hand it in July 1st, you're late, and it counts against you. So how about we just, but the regulations allow you to basically count it as good.
Would you craft one and just send it to the committee, and we'll next time we exec, we can put that in?
Of course, sir.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. So are you suggesting that we keep the 6 consecutive water tests, but reference the section of federal code that says the state may elect to return to quarterly testing? I'm just a little confused as to what you're suggesting.
Senator,
for
my
an
reading of the
amendment.
federal regulations is that taking that language would put us contrary to these regulations. And I believe the department when they say that, and it would potentially invite the EPA to take over or administer the water testing requirements more stringently. I don't doubt the sincerity of the gentleman from DES. Would I like to see that in there? Of course I would. But the last thing I want to do is have the EPA come in and regulate this more stringently than we would, if that makes sense.
So, but my question was about the 6 consecutive months of, the 6 consecutive water tests.
Yeah.
In a timely fashion. I'm just not sure what you're
So
suggesting.
the
we're
six,
gonna
the
see.
6 was, I put the number 6 in there in the bill as drafted, because I believe if you make 6 one-time water sample submissions, that should be good enough. The regulations indicate it should be closer to 12. And if 12 is the will of this committee, I'm fine with that, or we could just take out that entire section and go with paragraph 4. I think either way, it accomplishes the goal. I think that paragraph 4 would comply with federal regulations to the letter, and the bill that's drafted does not.
So if you wouldn't mind drafting that and sending that to the committee, just send it to Joshua, and we'll exec it the next time around with that in your intent. And are there any other questions? Good. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming back up. If I could have DS come back up one more time. Just, are you comfortable with us handling it that way?
Yes, I'm happy to work with the senator on the language, and would also like to put it through our legal review just to make sure everything lines up with the federal statutes and existing state statutes, but we certainly can work on that.
Thank you very much. All right, and with that, I have nobody else wanting to speak on this, so we're going to close the hearing on this, and we'll wait for that amendment. And then we're going to open up the hearing for SB 598 and hear from the prime sponsor. Yep. 598, going once.
I moved quicker in my younger days, so.
Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, illustrious members of this committee. For the record, I am Senator Mark McConkey. I represent the good people of Senate District 3, majority of the Lakes region. I'm here to offer Senate Bill 595, establishing a cyanobacteria mitigation fund and grant fund task force. In 2023, the legislature passed a one-time appropriation of $1 million to NHDS and established a cyanobacteria mitigation and grant fund. An additional $1 million was appropriated from ARPA funding, was also added to this fund. And currently, the funds were used to provide grants for 11 projects. But most of that fund has been expended at this time. I believe there's less than $200,000 in this fund. There are no great surpluses available from the state. The ARPA funds are gone. What do? This is extremely important funding and necessary. Cyano blooms not only endanger the health of our residents and their pets, unchecked or reduce property values. If that's not enough, a reason to support 598 is that even a threat of a cyano bloom, which happened 1 or 2 times this summer, adversely affected our summer camps, marine trades, and tourism in my Lakes district. There have been many attempts to add some monies into a fund, but we need something that could probably get into $2 million a year, a sustainable fund that can move forward. What the purpose of this is to form a task force. And the task force will report by the end of this year, November 1st, 2026. It's going to involve Department of Environmental Services, Subsurface, the Limnology Center, Fish and Game, Marine Patrol, River and Lakes Association, to name a few. And while we know that this is going to take some time to get through, I'm sure we'll exec this soon enough, and it'll take some time to work its way through the legislature and to get the governor. We've already begun conversations with all of these groups. Let's come to a table, let's sit down, and let's come up with 5 or 6 or 8 programs that we can all agree on. And that timing is everything. The number of summer camps I spoke to, private and public, and to the marine trades people, the loss of their revenue, shutting down Winnipesaukee because no one knew. Into the camps, the number of phone calls of parents concerned, should I pull my children, which made it again an issue in their minds this year. It's extremely important to my district, and I'm hopeful that you can move this through, and I'm happy to answer any questions that this committee might have.
Questions from the committee? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. one, would you consider having one senator instead of two? And secondly, does this task force need to be repealed? Or will it make a report but then continue on in statute forever? And I honestly don't know. I know commissions need to be repealed. I don't know about task forces.
I think you raise two good questions, as you always do.
Thank you.
I believe the intent of this was a task force that will come to a close and end. And that if there's not, if there's need for it in the future, let the future legislators bring it through. The reason senators are always asking to have less representation, the reason that I chose two was Senator Lang's willingness to help out with this from Ways and Means, and I thought that would be extremely helpful. But if it was, I'm sure he would offer his assistance. So I go to the pleasure of the committee on what you'd like to do.
So does it need a sunset provision in this, or
Well, that's what I'm wondering. We could check with,
would you want, we could do a quick committee amendment to
Sure.
add that into, when would you want it to sunset?
well,
The
and
end of the
it's
year.
reporting November 1st, so it could sunset December 1st or something.
I would be agreeable to that.
Okay. But you like the two senators?
I always do.
Okay.
And like you, I understand this subject matter in this committee.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator. Jody?
Very brief. For the record, my name is Jody Grimbliss. I'm here representing New Hampshire Marine Trades Association. We strongly support this bill. It is the right approach. It's statewide stakeholders looking at trying to find sustainable funding. Thank you.
Glad we had this talk. Any questions? Seeing none. We really appreciate your testimony. DES, Amy.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. My name is Amy Smagula, and I'm the Chief Aquatic Biologist and Limnology Center Director at the Department of Environmental Services. Yeah, hello. So I've been with the state for 29 years, and I oversee programs that relate to monitoring the state's surface waters, including the cyanobacteria issue. Senator McConkey did most of my work for me introducing his bill. I was going to provide a little bit of background, but he did most of that work. DES does not take a position on this bill, but I did want to be available for questions regarding cyanobacteria. We do have about 60 water bodies a year that bloom, and they do produce toxins, so that is definitely a problem. The funding was well defined by Senator McConkey. We have about $200,000 left. Most of our projects are anywhere between $200,000 to $500,000. So they are very expensive projects, and that $2 million went very quickly. Senate Bill 598, as proposed, would seek to establish this task force that would hopefully create a multifaceted approach at funding. A lot of these projects do increase local support, but local entities really don't have a lot of money to contribute, like lake associations or river associations. So there is definitely a need to help support their efforts to clean up watersheds and water bodies that are blooming or that are being impacted by their watersheds that are contributing a lot of nutrients. So the list is long. We did do 11 projects. However, we do have tens of projects that are just in the queue. Tucker Pond in Salisbury, Province Lake in Effingham, Lake Winnipesaukee has a number of areas that could benefit from management. Babuzik Lake in Amherst and Merrimack. So we have some that are right in the queue that are working on projects, and then many more that are in the wings. So
This is very critical for our tourism as well.
It is critical for tourism because we do have blooms that do impact recreation. The cyanotoxins that are formed from blooms can cause issues with drinking water supplies, recreation, human health, the health of our pets that might drink out of the lakes and ponds. So yeah, a lot of factors there. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I'm happy to take any questions specific to cyanobacteria.
Questions from the committee? Senator Waters.
Yeah, thanks so much. And really following up on Senator McConkey's testimony too. You mentioned 16 water bodies. We've got them all over the state. And isn't it likely that as temperatures warm and other factors, that we may see many more bodies of water that will have these blooms?
We are starting to see blooms in waters that are big and small, and that is a testament to both warm summer temperatures that we see, but also all the nutrients that are coming in from the, well, not when we're in a drought, but when we do have those sudden rainstorms that just flush our watersheds and push that water right into our lakes, carrying everything with it that is in the watershed. So yes, it's a multitude of factors.
And isn't it accurate to say that a lot of this, I mean, there might be some point sources in the rainstorms and so on, but it's just the nature of our environment has, you know, the environmental background is producing the potassium and other things that are contributing?
So yes, our landscape uses are contributing to nutrient loading. So erosion, paved surfaces, fertilizing lawns and flower gardens and things like that in the watershed. It's a cumulative thing. Septic systems that are older, unmaintained are contributing as well. So we look to both the watershed when we're managing lakes, but also in the lake as well. The funding that we've been using for these projects has been holistic, looking at watershed and in-lake remediation efforts.
And another for me. And you know, a lot of things you've identified, by the erosion and drainage and paving and so on and so forth, that isn't it the case that, you know, DOT and DES actually, you know, on an ongoing basis are trying to address some of those just as their part of their regular work?
That is correct. We do have a lot of partnerships with state agencies as well as municipalities, lake associations, and other groups so that we can partner and share information for stormwater management and best uses or best management practices in our landscape near and far from water.
Yeah. And I mean, I would just say what's good about this bill is the way that it leverages all the folks who might be involved in dealing with the problem. So my last question is, you know, we had the 2 million. You got a couple of thousand left, which might do maybe one or something, but how, just looking forward, if, what do you think is the need going to be? You know, like $1 million a year or a couple million a year just going forward, or do you have any sense?
If I had to put a number on it based on the demand that I'm seeing from requests that come into the agency, then it would probably be upwards of about $1 million or $2 million a year. That's a fair assessment. The last couple of projects that we worked on were about $500,000 each, and we've had to space those out so that we could both accommodate them with staff and resources, but also funding as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrea, from the Lakes region, you're our final speaker, and we prefer you to speak from your heart, and so we can move this along.
Good morning again. I'm Andrea Lamoureux, President and Policy Advocate of New Hampshire Lakes. We are supportive of this bill for all the reasons that you've heard from Senator McConkey and the scope of the problem that Ms. Smagula shared with you all. I did have one comment in the makeup of the task force, and we were wondering if the bill might be clarified to say, instead of a member of a river or lake association appointed by the governor, to say a member of a river and a lake association. So to make sure that those two constituent groups are represented. And that would be our comments today, and we urge you to support this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
The line on that is?
It is let's see, line
17. Got it.
17, correct.
Questions from the committee? Senator McConkey.
Thank you, and it's always nice to see you. So are you saying you would like to see a member from the river and a member from the Lakes Association?
Right, so two separate, one representing rivers and one representing lakes.
Thank you. My only concern, and perhaps the other senators with longer term here, I'm always worried about what a quorum is going to be, and we are going to meet so short a period of time. I don't want to get into an issue of not having a quorum, so.
Sure.
So we'll think about that. Last time I knew you two were working hands in hand.
You're
We do-
welcome to come, yes.
Yes, we do work hand in hand, and I appreciate that, and I'll leave that to the committee to
Yeah,
decide.
quorums are,
That's a good point.
Thank you.
yeah. So with that, no further questions.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. We're going to close the hearing on 598, and I'm going to ask if we can go into exec. Is there a motion to move into exec?
So move.
Seconded by
Second.
Senator Waters. All in favor? Aye. Is there a motion on 598? Okay. Now, is there a discussion amendment,
Committee amendment?
a committee amendment on what line?
Changing the membership, line 7 from 2 members of the Senate to be 1 member of the Senate. And after further great reflection, after speaking with the last lady to speak, I would like to, line 17, however the numbering would be, a member of River and a member of the Lakes Association appointed by the governor.
Joshua, can you repeat that for me, please? Yes, there is on page 598.
Page 1.
Yeah.
So line 17, you guys want it to be,
Josh, I think what we want is J to be a member of the River Association and K to be add a K to it and have it a Lake Association. That's what I think you want to do.
Senator, given the issue about appointment timing, do you think it might in each case just say appointed by the association rather than the governor?
But with that, I think that's a good valid point.
And where will we put that?
Well, just in the two new ones, instead of saying appointed by the governor, say appointed by the, or, I mean, is there a director of each of these?
Associations?
Yeah.
Yes. there
Yeah,
is.
all right, we'll say director of each association or designee. And is there anything else appointed by the governor, or is that it?
Well, the governor's on this.
Well, the governor or designee, fine,
Yeah,
but in terms of appointing, that's the only one's appointed by the governor.
I think that's a great amendment.
Yeah,
I'd
so
like
let's,
to accept that.
I think it makes sense to do it that way, because you'd be off the races right away if
Sure.
it passes.
So on line 7, it's going to be 1 member of the Senate, and then on line 17, would you read from me what we just discussed?
they currently say the member of a river or lake association, or the other to be a member of a river and a lake association.
So what we would do is have, one of them would say, the director of the Lakes Association or designee.
Appointed by,
No, just say the director of the Rivers Association or designee. Yeah, and then the director of the Lakes Association.
You don't want to say appointed by the governor.
No, correct, no. So it'd be the director of the rivers and director of the lakes or designee. And then do you want a repeal date, December?
and a repeal date at the
1st.
end, December 1st.
Yeah,
You want it December 1st.
well, I
Well,
wonder
or
if
it
the
could be
senator wants.
January 1st, I mean, in case they were
Yeah,
late.
why not?
January
But
1st.
it probably would say section 1 is repealed
Yeah, yeah,
January 1st.
Yeah.
And the rest of the act, well, that is the rest of the act.
good.
And then I'm just going to ask you to regurgitate that to me one more time, from beginning to the end.
So it was gonna say line 7, 1 member to 2 members of the Senate. Line 17, it's a director of or designee for both the River and Lake Association. And then it's gonna be sunset January 1st.
Separate the two.
Right,
Yeah,
too.
at least that.
Yeah, you need
No,
J.
but
I
it's
and-
separated
I mean, I
by
and J.
And J.
For those two, yeah.
All in favor of the committee amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Did anybody move the committee amendment?
We just did.
Okay, I didn't know if we moved it.
Well, now that we moved it, all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. I'll second, yep, I think we missed a
Yeah,
step.
did we miss a step?
Yeah.
So we're gonna,
Senator McConkey moved it, I second.
that's exactly how it happened.
Yes.
And we're on film. That makes me old, right?
Yeah.
All right, so all in favor of the committee amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. All in favor of the bill passing as amended?
Motion. Senator McConkey and myself, yep, we'll do it again.
I can be taught. All right, so all in favor as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Rosenwald says consent, so we're going to listen to her. And all in favor of consent?
Aye.
Seconded by Senator Pearl. And Senator McConkey, would you do us the honors?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so it's on consent, and is there a motion to move out of exec? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, seeing none? Yeah. And now we're gonna wait for the illustrious senator to,
Could you give my colleagues the copies of the amendment?
For
493, yeah. Senator Roosevelt. I have some additional.
Senator Waters, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Senator David Waters, District 4, introducing Senate Bill 493 relative to cyanobacteria and other emerging environmental water quality issues. And you'll see that the amendment I provided, 0621S, replaces the first part of the bill. And there are two parts to this bill. One suggests some ways in which village districts could be involved in putting, over time funds for treatment of cyanobacteria. And the second part would allow village districts to, on a vote of each distinct body, to plan together with each other, since might be several municipalities that are surrounding a given water body. So, we heard with Senator McConkey's bill, the dire threat that cyanobacteria means for our water bodies. And really, we've all gotten the emails, and it's really all around the state, the great anxiety about cyanobacteria. And we really need to have a way of doing something about this. And we heard about the health effects, we heard about some of the summer camps and so on, but I would like to also emphasize people who have businesses that rely on recreation on the water. Imagine what a hit a business would take if boaters and others using a marina can't use the water because there's a boom. And then I don't really know how many billions of dollars we have around our lakes in the state, but it's a substantial amount of real estate, and what that might do to property values if we don't get this under control, and therefore what it might do to municipal property tax revenues away. So this is a huge emerging problem all across our states as cyanobacteria is there. So what I have in the first part of the bill, and please note the crucial changes here, that what this would allow is village districts over time, by a vote of all the members of the district, to establish a funding mechanism whereby over time they could feed a fund, which you'll see in the contingency reserves fund down starting on line 18, over time to be able to provide some funding into that vehicle. Now, I think we just passed an important bill on what we're going to do about funding, but I think this is something we actually could do right now. And also, in the purest form of our democracy, you'll let the people most affected find a way to try to do something about treatment. what's important in this amendment, is that note that the word mitigation has been restricted to treatment. So there were concerns about what this might mean for larger mitigation. What does that mean? Is that starting to get into property rights? Is it starting to get into certain areas like erosion control and so forth, which might be more meaningfully left to the DES than the DOT. So this is simply for treatment now. And then if you'll turn to the definition section, starting at the bottom of the first page of the amendment, another crucial change here. Notice that the definition of cyanobacteria treatment and water protection means addressing public facilities and public services performed to mitigate cyanobacteria and related water increases, phosphate source treatment and treatment of effective water bodies. So it's limited very much to treatment now. And then a crucial on line 4 there, because of the concerns we heard about marinas and others, I've added excluding a restriction on access to public waters consistent with RSA 27120-A. So if there's any concern that this now treatment plan for cyanobacteria might impinge upon any access, that's been addressed by that amendment. Now, the second part of the bill, you know, really regardless of what you think about what I put forward about cyanobacteria and the ability of village districts to raise some funding to deal with treatment, I think that we really need what begins on line 10 with section 5 on the original bill. What this would allow village districts to do is say instead of any town or city, it would allow for towns and cities themselves, towns and cities together, and village districts to join together so that they're not piecemeal and trying again and again, just with one another. They would have to then, they'd be able to come together and before they propose something, they would need to work out an agreement that they would jointly undertake, and then the legislative body of each of those entities would vote on agreeing to this larger planning structure. This is something that has brought forward by the Lakes Association as a way to just really mean that they could organize and work together with other entities. And as I said in the start of my testimony, obviously so many water bodies are under multiple jurisdictions of towns, cities, various village districts. And so this would actually let them work and plan together. And frankly, one town does a lot of things, and the town next to it isn't doing any of them. It just really kind of can erase the benefit the one town might have tried to do. So you'll see also to follow up with that if we allow that cooperation to occur, then line 24, then they would be able to jointly apply for funds to do their projects. And so a single proposal could come together for funding, whether it's for the state resources mentioned under the statutes there, or whether there's federal programs available that they could get together and do that. So 2 parts of the bill. I think they both have value, but I just wanted to emphasize the second part, because regardless of what you may think of village districts and their role, or regardless of what you think this approach to cyanobacteria, this second one will be a very helpful tool for towns, cities, and village districts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is a may, not a shall, correct? Consistent with provision may.
Yep.
I don't see an FN on this.
You're the one.
This isn't. Why does it say FN on my sheet?
I don't know.
Yeah, this is FN, but this does not. Okay.
Yeah, there's not one. And you'll see that, I mean, it requires no spending, this bill.
Yeah, my folder says that, and my bill does not.
No, it's not.
So that confuses this little gray head. Senator Waters, I mean Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. I was trying to look up the statutes on my phone, which is difficult, but I found the funding source, the loan mitigation fund under RSA 485A, but I didn't find a funding source under 487-15 through 25.
I don't have my phone in front of me either. I'll check.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my
Or
first
maybe somebody else
question.
behind me knows.
My second
Follow up.
question, if I could follow up, thank you, is if the village district decides to establish bonding authority, would the individual members of that district be able to vote on whether to bond at their town meetings? Or would it require them to take on a bond?
I think you'll see, if you look at the overall village district, it always requires a vote
By the members?
of the members, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say on this regard, not related to cyanobacteria, but there's a village district that deals with water provision in Rollinsford, very small, but an important neighborhood served by it. And, you know, when they have come forward with a proposal to put some new water lines in, they were doing some bonding, but also they were able to get there was some money from the infrastructure bill that came in from federal sources, but it all required those votes.
Senator Pearl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your work on the amendment here. I'm reading on your amendment, page 2, your definition. So you've taken the word mitigate out of the name of the program, but you still have the word mitigate on line 2, which is kind of what defines the action of what the program is doing.
Yeah, I think it was just a mistake. So I think on line 2, it should say treatment.
I think that would.
Yeah, thanks for pointing it out. I just think,
Yeah.
you know, this just arrived this morning and I put it in last night and that one was missed.
That's okay.
So just strike mitigate into treatment?
Yeah.
To treatment of, or to treat cyanobacteria, either one I think would work.
Yeah, to treat cyanobacteria. And then, but do note on the line 3, you don't want, it's not phosphate force treatment. That is mitigation, but that's really a different, that's a different thing.
Further questions?
I think that answered that one.
Thank you, Senator. I think that's it, unless you want to add anything else.
I'm good.
You are allowed to leave and join us again up here in the illustrious seats to overlook the crowd, the wonderful crowd just smiling, wishing to hear from Andrea.
Good morning. It's still morning. I'm still Andrea Lamoureux, policy advocate and president of New Hampshire Lakes. And we are here in support of this bill. Very briefly, we support this bill really primarily because it allows cities, towns, areas around lakes to be joined together in a village district to better coordinate protecting the lake, treating the lake. Water quality issues, cyanobacteria blooms, they do not follow municipal boundaries. And this is enabling legislation. And, folks don't have, this does not have to be done. It just provides another option for which a village district can be formed. And we know there is some concern that it takes, I think, 10 people to petition for the formation of a village district. Then it would go to a vote, and it would go to a vote of all the people that would be in that proposed district. And then village district would only be formed if it was, the will of the whole, essentially. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? See you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Rung, you colored it in very nicely. I don't know if you want to speak or not, but you're in support of the bill?
She is in support, had to leave for another bill.
Okay. Thank you. And let's see. Mr. Quinn.
Good morning. My name is Bob Quinn. I'm the CEO of the New Hampshire Association of Realtors, and we do have concerns with the bill as written. I was trying to look at the amendment to see if some of it may have alleviated some of our concerns. I think our concerns really have to do with how these village districts are created. Historically, they're really targeted and have been established for unique infrastructure and service needs. So it's water, it's sewer, fire suppression, those sorts of things. And as Andrea mentioned, it only takes 10 voters to petition the town to ask for a village district. The town itself, under 52, does not get a chance to veto that request. They are just there to assist in the voting of the process. So if you have small village districts like this in a lake or a pond, you could experience a patchwork of regulations and rules throughout that community. And we're not sure if a small village district on a pond is created, how much of an impact it could possibly have in terms of mitigating cyanobacteria. We appreciate and applaud the efforts of the previous bill and Senator McConkey in looking at this issue. There's a bill in the House that realtors are supportive of, which is House Bill 1301, which is trying to get money into the cyanobacteria fund. We think that's a better approach. In 2022, the state of New Hampshire, under House Bill 1066, created a study commission that the Department of Environmental Services shepherded through. Nowhere in that fairly lengthy report does it mention the need or a desire to create village districts in order to combat this issue. So for those, and I would also mention that in 2024, Realtors worked with the Department of Environmental Services on House Bill 1113, which was intended to try to alleviate some of the concerns with cyanobacteria and septic systems. We worked with DES for about 6 months to come up with a plan and a process that works for both buyers, sellers, as well as protects the health of those living around those communities. I think that's been successful. We've only been had that in effect for about a year. We think those sorts of approaches, statewide approaches, are more appropriate than trying to create a small village district to handle cyanobacteria, when it only may be a small percentage of property owners around a lake or a pond. So
one more time on why the concern on villages established. What is the bottom line for that?
So you're going to create you could potentially create a patchwork of regulations and rules around any water body. That may be different. You may have a town that has one set of rules, but the village district within that town has a different set of rules the next town over. We think it's a better approach that the state takes. If the state is having a challenge figuring out how to combat and deal with these blooms, it's just challenging for us to see that a group of 10 voters on one of these bodies might have a better idea or solution. I think it has to be universal, it has to be global, and that's the reason why we would encourage you to take a second look at this bill.
Senator Waters?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I hear your concerns, certainly. And, you're not asking for the repeal of the authority to create village districts, right? No. Right. And you did note that the 10 can petition, which is so fundamental to our rights as citizens, but that it takes the entirety of the group that might be affected by within the village district to vote.
Yeah, I think we certainly aren't here saying, hey, remove the ability to do village districts. We might suggest that I think that was put in 1849. And 10 people in a rural section, maybe it made sense. Maybe that number needs to be a bit higher than 10. And that's something that we would certainly be willing and interested in having a conversation about.
Oh, yeah, so, I mean, I understand the anxieties around village districts themselves, which is why I tried to limit in the amendment, and include that exclusion, factor there. But in terms of your point about the patchwork, that in fact, the second part of the bill might help address that,
Yeah.
because it'll let people get together and be more consistent.
And I'm happy to take a look at that. I was trying to glance at it in the back of the room, but it may mitigate some of the concerns that we had with the bill. I don't think, and I'm staying corrected, I don't think that we've seen a village district created using the 51, RSA 51, in about a half a century. It's been a long time since one was created. And I think that's the reason for that is because we don't experience as many rural areas as we once did in terms of separated from the town center. And I think when you look at some of the reasons why these village districts were created, again, to bring water, sewer, fire suppression, there's one up in Conway, the lighting precinct, to provide lighting. You don't see those sorts of challenges anymore, and because towns can handle it.
Yeah, my last question. Indeed, though, in terms of water treatment, and as I did, it's not on a lake, but I mentioned Rollinsford, where they treat water for a certain area of the town in the village district, but water supply can be devastated by cyanobacteria. Isn't that the case? So it really,
Correct.
Cyanobacteria and the original purpose of the village districts go hand in hand. Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I tried.
I think treating cyanobacteria is better handled at a statewide level. As we mentioned, there were 60 water bodies.
Yeah.
I think it was last year that saw blooms. This is not just going to impact one small village district. It's going to impact communities across the state.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kyle Baker.
Good morning. My name is Kyle Baker, here on behalf of the New Hampshire Wildlife Federation. New Hampshire Wildlife Federation is a 92-year-old conservation nonprofit that focuses on advocating for hunting, fishing, public access across the state. We're here to just raise a couple of concerns we had. I know there's already been a little bit of talk. Our concerns mainly centered around public access and the ability of a village district to restrict public access on a body of water. I'm just going through the amendment now, and I'm happy to bring it back to them for review. I will just say that public access, as it's defined in 271, talks mainly about land that's continually held, controlled, or managed by the state or state agencies. So access is not always through those state lands or state controlled lands. We have 42 different high schools now that have bass fishing teams. And they may have partnerships with marinas. They may have partnerships with other landowners, farmers, timberland owners to get access onto that water. So we may want to flesh out that access issue a little bit more. Like I said, I've just got the amendment now, so I'm happy to bring it back, but I'll let my written testimony speak for the rest of the other. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chairman, for the ability to comment on this bill. Amy Smagula, Department of Environmental Services. We are not taking a position on this bill, but I just wanted to add a couple more things building off from the testimony of those who testified before me. In my recent experience with a lot of these big scale projects, cyanobacteria mitigation projects in particular, local efforts are really critical to the success of these projects, and that includes buy-in and building a local consensus and also local support financially for these projects. So that's just a little piece of the benefit that we see by having that local contribution coming to projects like this. And just a little bit, I'm not an expert on village districts, but doing some homework for the bill, it looks like that there's a petition of 10 or more voters that can request the village district. Adoption of a village district requires passage of a warrant article at a town meeting, and then continued coordination with the town for the collection and disbursement of the funds. And the district can be dissolved at a 2/3 vote. It looks like there are about 100 village districts across New Hampshire right now for various reasons, like those who testified before me indicated. So those were just a couple of facts about the village districts. And I just wanted to answer a question that Senator Rosenwald posed about funding in RSA 4715 through 25. The funding that's currently allocated for that program is specifically for mitigation of exotic aquatic weeds in the state. So there's not currently any funding allocated in that statute for lake restoration efforts. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate coming up.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Harper. I'm the Executive Director of the Lake Sunapee Protective Association and the Center for Lake Studies in Sunapee, New Hampshire. I've really appreciated all of your questions this morning about cyanobacteria. It's very clear that you all understand that it is a huge issue in our state. It's a growing problem. It's incredibly expensive to manage. But I think one thing that's important for us all to understand is that it's far more costly not to address this issue. It's one that being proactive in our approaches, using good science-based approaches that we know well to address these issues really can make a huge difference for our economy, including real estate values, property taxes, and the tourism industry in our state. Finding funding mechanisms is challenging. Our organization works collaboratively. We've worked very closely with New Hampshire Lakes and DES and also with municipalities to leverage funds and work collaboratively to find resources and to be able to move projects forward that are proactive. And we've been very successful in those approaches, and we've been able to get a lot done. This bill that's before you would provide us an extra mechanism to facilitate those collaborations. And I think it would really allow us to continue to move forward with some of the creative solutions that are needed to find funding for these projects. So I think this is a mechanism that would really empower people in these regions who understand the value of our lakes to be able to work together to find solutions. I think it's a very important opportunity to empower people in local communities to work together. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
So what are your thoughts about the village, that portion of it, and versus the state being whole? I mean,
It's Yeah, no, I think it's supportive I'm very supportive of this mechanism, and I don't think it needs to be seen as an either or. I think it can work together. So all of the projects and the funding that we've done, we've really done that in collaboration with partners at DES. We don't see that as an either or, and I know oftentimes it's presented that way. So we try to work closely and collaboratively, and I don't think that there's any reason to think that those two things are at odds with one another. Yes, I do, and I haven't had a chance to look at the entire amendment. Is there a particular part? Yes, no, I do. And the only things that I would like to clarify also is I don't think anyone that I'm aware of that's in support of this is intending it to limit public access in any way, and our organization certainly would not want to see this be used as a mechanism to limit public access. I think our intent in supporting this bill is entirely to allow collaborative approaches to fundraising and management of natural resources. That's great. That's great. Thank you.
There you go. Do I speak? I expect loud. I expect loud enough.
Thank you, members of the committee. For the
Jody.
record, my name is Jody Grimbliss. I have here with me John Wally from the New Hampshire Marine Trades Association. I've passed in a couple of letters.
Jody,
for-
would you mind pointing that? There you go.
Yeah. I've passed in a couple of letters from folks who could not be here today. The Lakes Region Tourism Association opposes the legislation, as well as the National Marine Manufacturers Association. There's concerns about the bill and its premise and policy. So I'm going to just talk about a couple of the issues that we have. John can talk a little bit more about the public access issues, but as we start, we strongly oppose the bill. It's a major shift in policy for New Hampshire state bodies of water that are held in public trust, which are really regulated by the state and protected by the state at this point in time. Senate Bill 493, as you know, establishes allows for the establishment of village districts. I've also done a little bit of homework on village districts. It's a new, small governing body that has the authority to levy taxes, impose fine, impact property rights, and again, we believe impose restrictions on public access. It only requires 10 people to petition to establish boundaries are drawn. I don't know how that's done, about boundaries being drawn. Only those who live or domicile in the district can vote. So I don't know what that means for the marina that's in the district, but the owner lives outside the district. Or the Nashua family that has a house in Guilford. I don't know that they would have the right to vote in that district or for that district or about that district, but they would certainly be impacted by that district's decision, whether it be a property tax increase, fines, levies, etc. So those are some of the questions I have. Certainly not an expert in village districts. I will tell you, I did look to see when's the last time we changed that that statute about what purpose we can establish a village district for. And Mr. Quinn is correct. It's at least over 45 years. I have to go to archives to see when's the last time another purpose was added to RSA 52-1, the establishment factor, because the last change they had in that statute was 2003, which was about who could vote, and it had to be someone who was domiciled. But prior to that was 1981, and I have to go to archives to find out when the last time a new purpose was made for a village district.
What was that purpose?
I can't tell. I have to go to archives, and I couldn't get there before today. It looks like it was the maintenance of ambulance services was the last letter adopted into that statute. So I would also note that this, in essence, this bill has already failed previously twice in the House. In 2024, it's basically the same bill, except this bill has the word cyanobacteria. The bill in 2024, which was House Bill 1250, talked about the protection and remediation of surface water quality, but the debate in the committees were all about cyanobacteria at the time. That failed in the House. And then in 2025, House Bill 332, basically the same bill as 2024, also was killed in the House. And the House had concerns about that new level of authority or jurisdiction over those property owners at the time. We strongly support the other bills to find appropriate levels of sustainable funding at the state level. Like we just talked about Senate Bill 598, there is House Bill 1301 in the House, which is about a $25 increase on the mooring fee to add money to the cyanobacteria fund. And there's also a bill, House Bill 1477, which has a new permitting function for seasonal platforms. And the funding from that bill will also go to cyanobacteria. So I do think there are opportunities between the House bills and the Senate task force to find sustainable statewide funding. We think the expertise is best left at the Department of Environmental Services and at the state. Otherwise, we're going to have, as mentioned before, patchwork, too many chefs in the kitchen trying to figure out what we're doing here when really the state has the requirement under the public trust doctrine to be specifically protecting those natural resources. So again, I kind of look at this like milfoil. We've had milfoil concerns for many years. There has been a lot of collaboration. There are towns that have put things on their warrant article to raise money, depending on what town it is. So there are ways for towns and municipalities to participate without the creation of village districts. That occurs now. I don't know that this new governing body is necessary to the kinds of collaborations we've seen for decades when it comes to milfoil and other aquatic invasive species. And then we'll talk about public access, and I'll point to John, but I would note that the bill, and I think even, I haven't really checked it close enough, even in the amendment, talks about the village district to defray expenses and take other appropriate necessary action. That's broad language to me. Other necessary, appropriate action necessary. It says treatment, but I don't know if that could also, it would be well required to treat this by eliminating this particular aspect or this particular level of boating or fishing or et cetera. So I do worry about how creative people will get when it comes to that small group of people that are going to be doing this regulation at that local level. And just when it comes to Senator Rosenwald, you had asked about the funding for lake restoration. That comes from fees on your boat's registration. So a lot of the fees that have been talked about for whether it's milfoil or cyanobacteria or dam maintenance comes from the motorized boating community. So we really we appreciate having the ability to have those discussions here and not try to figure out which little town or little village district is trying to increase the property taxes or et cetera. It's a statewide discussion and we think it should stay at the state. So let me just turn it to John. Sorry, but those are some of the points I'd like to make.
Thank you, Jody. Again, John Wally from the New Hampshire Marine Trade Association. I've been in the boating industry for 25 years and experienced, again, challenges of people having access to our lakes currently. Just a quick story, and then I'll end it for you all. I met a customer, not a boater, he had a sailboat who was selling it. And he said that he had moved from Vermont to New Hampshire and had already experienced challenges to launch his boat and use his boat in parking spaces. The concern with village districts, in my opinion, is that at some point, somehow, some way, they find ways to control the area and limit how people can access water, whether it's treatment on boat ramps, on the facilities, and people that are already on the water have their boats in the water and they're using them. It just eliminates the public that don't have the right to get on the water easily because they don't live in those properties. And that's the issue. It's people that can't and just kind of throw their hands up and say, it's just too hard. I'm moving on to something else. It's challenging.
So we'll leave it at that and answer any questions.
So basically your concern with the village districts is that they can possibly levy fines and taxes and that's within the purview of 10 people or
10 people would petition, and then the
With
people in the district, however those boundaries are drawn, would make that decision. I just don't know, again, the small businesses within that district, the tourism-related businesses, the marinas, et cetera, I don't know what voice they have in that.
And the concern you also have is that only local individuals have the vote. If somebody from Nashua, which I happen to live in, owned some property on the lake, they wouldn't have voting rights on it.
I don't think they would have the right, but somebody else might know better. I'm looking at Senator Pro because he's on municipal.
So I'm gonna go from the prime sponsor first and then, and then you.
Really, to what you said earlier and to Senator Avard's query, isn't it the case that if you're not a resident of the town, you don't get to vote on the school budget or on the town
Correct.
budget anyways?
I think this would be no different than that.
Yeah.
But it would be another level of government that would allow more.
Isn't it also the case that if you own a business in a municipality and you're not a resident there, you don't get the vote on the school budget or the town budget, which sets the tax rate, right?
Correct.
So
But
this is no different whatsoever in terms of whether people can vote or not.
Right, but it's definitely a smaller microcosm of looking at a particular issue and having the authority to raise funds, taxes, et cetera. However, on a smaller group of people that they may be
And
involved
just to follow up, and, you know, as we heard from DES, I mean, 10 people to petition, it's good to have petitions. That's fundamental to that's why we fought a revolution. But it's 2/3, it takes 2/3 vote, right?
I think it was 2/3 vote to dissolve one. But I'd have to look at the statute again.
Perform it.
I
10
think it's a
people don't-
majority to pass, but I think it's
Yeah.
2/3 to dissolve.
So,
Yes.
democracy. Thank you.
Senator Pearl.
Thank you. I'm trying to get my head around this as I'm thinking about it more. Because we're creating a village district in one town, but you may have a lake that has several communities on it. And the problem is lake-wide, not usually in one area. And I'm trying to think about how this would truly impact solving the issue if you had one of the, so Lake Winnipesaukee, I think there's 7 communities that are involved with and own property around the lake. And if I remember correctly, I'm not sure, am I right on that?
I know there's at least 7.
Yeah. And if one of the towns decides to put a village district in, how does that impact the other 6? I guess they all access the lake equally. In the lake, I think that's why we have these state controlled, is because of these situations like this. And it's a resource. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out, I don't know, your thoughts on that?
I think we agree that the state approach is the best approach. Having the state Department of Environmental Services, Department of Safety, kind of look at the regulations, the protections, et cetera, and then through the state, we find funding mechanisms, and then those go out through the grants to the municipalities, to the Lake Watershed Associations, has been the right approach. I don't know that that approach is wrong, that it would require this wholesale change to do something different. So we would suggest that the state approach, which is, it's a state problem, we have state expertise, we have state wonderful folks, Amy, I've known Amy forever, working on these programs, but they bring people together, they do collaborate. It's just, it's not a village district. It's towns and lakes associations and everyone working towards the same, but it's a statewide oversight. It's not individual patchwork.
So milfoil is a statewide problem as well.
Correct, and we handle it through a statewide solution. We don't have village districts for milfoil.
And it's a serious issue.
Correct, I think Amy would correct me, but there was 98 or 100 water bodies that have milfoil or aquatic invasive species in those water bodies that are managed by her and her staff, with the help of New Hampshire Lakes Association, which has the Lake Host program, the various folks giving, again, there's a lot of fundraising that goes along, but there's a lot of efforts that are collaborative. We do that way now.
Senator Waters?
Just to clarify what was said by DES and also by my amendment, that at this point in time, village districts cannot control access to public water bodies, and because that is state, and the issue you raised about whether somebody could use a ramp has nothing to do with village districts, and the amendment clarifies that anything it does shall exclude any restriction on access.
I think I appreciate your
all right,
attempt in that
thank you. I
amendment.
just
I'm
wanted
not
to
sure
make
we'd
that
still,
We understood that. Thank you.
I do appreciate that.
My concern is you take a lake like Lake Winnipesaukee, which has one state ramp in Laconia. Yep. And there's multiple towns on that lake. You know, Belmont, Meredith, Laconia. There's probably others I'm thinking of. Tilton, yeah. And if there was a treatment issue in that area, that would cut off the whole lake to the public, other than private boat ramps, or in the situation, Winnipesaukee Marine has the other boat ramp that's in Winnipesaukee or Belmont. So there is some limitations there, that if there is an area of challenge, the access is gone. That's the issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, just to say, it's the case, if there's cyanobacteria in there, nobody wants to access it.
But it's a large
anyway.
lake. I mean,
Okay,
I understand
good.
that too. You can drive through it. You know, we had issues in Winnipesaukee, and they were all of a sudden red bars all around the lake and borders, and people had the impression that the whole lake was closed. It's a large lake, and you know, when you start using the magic marker, you can get a little creative.
And that feeds into another area, doesn't it? The
Sunset Lake and
Sunset
down
Lake.
through there into the Winnipesaukee River. So yes.
Thank you.
Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for taking my question. The boat ramps, the property of the state and controlled by the state, and they wouldn't be subject to restrictions by any local jurisdictions.
In that situation, it is. There are others that are not necessarily state ramps that people access as the issue.
Local ramps.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Amy, you got anything else you want to add? Senator McConkey.
Yeah, if I could, Chairman, could I ask a question of Amy? I apologize for not having.
You're not off the hook yet. Come on.
So Amy, I listened with interest of the number of times a rendition of this legislation is brought forward for the benefit of lakes and forming a village district. I know in my town, in Freedom, with the milfoil issue, Danforth Pond there, the town raised money for mitigation of that. When a town acts as an individual for an action like that, that must have to go through your department?
So when a local entity provides funding towards the project, it comes in as match towards the project. So we would offer a grant to the town of Freedom for Danforth Pond, for example. And then if the town of Freedom had funding, they would match up to whatever 50% of the project cost. So we don't control or regulate what they do on a local level, but it's just a mechanism to be engaged and provide match. There are several towns around New Hampshire that do allocate resources, but I do work with a number of individual lakes and ponds that don't have support from the town, and that needs to find a way to raise money, either through lake associations or through something like a village district to contribute local match towards the project. So this would be a vehicle for that.
If I could follow up. So my question is, in the event this legislation was not to make it through both bodies, but the towns could knit together funding if they so chose through the Lakes Association or someone they could put, if they were to bring a volume of money together to take care of a cyno bloom or whatever, is it possible for them to do that as a targeted action with their own funds and be approved by your department?
That's certainly happening, and it's certainly been happening, yes. Yeah, so it's certainly happening already. A lot of towns are leveraging funding on their own, and lake associations are doing targeted fundraising or dues to support projects. So yes, it is something that's already happening. It's not an activity that DES sanctions. We definitely encourage local supportive projects because, as I testified earlier, it does build engagement in a project. And when people are putting resources up for a project, they really want to see success, that money is going to a good purpose and that they're going to see results. So yeah, there is a benefit there from that.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Waters? Thank you. Just to follow up on what my colleague is asking about. Is the second part of the bill, starting on page 5, which is to which Senator McConkey was referencing, this possibility for folks to work together. As the existing statute has it, say in line 15 on page 2, it says part of the area of the town or city. And then on line 18 and 19, same thing, town or city. That the purpose of saying this collocation here rather than piecemeal comes to yeah, that's all right. I just didn't want to interrupt. That the point of doing that up above in 1 and 2 is for 2A, that when the application process for funding that might be available, that the groups can work together. So it's not, well, this town is funding for X% and that each of those separate applications, that this would allow all the bodies to get together and form a single application. Is that the advantage of this?
That could be one advantage of strengthening local support for a project by binding together community members, dwellings within a given area around a water body with a municipality. I know several lakes that have multiple municipalities around them and fragmented lake associations. So it does provide another option for that. I see it happening that way if this bill does pass.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any further questions? None? Thank you very much. Seeing how my back was turned.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to close the hearing on SB 493. And is there a motion to move into exec?
Moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. SB 539, the eligible biomass technology in the renewable portfolio standards. This is Senator McCarthy's bill, I believe.
What's the number again? I'm sorry.
539 FN. Why is this in my folder? I thought we did do that in study.
Yeah, it sounded familiar.
Yeah. It shouldn't be in my folder. It's in my folder.
Can we accept mine, the one we haven't heard yet?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure, why not? Set a precedent.
Senator Waters, holy cow, well, now I'm discombobulated here.
I would just bring up for point of conversation and not a vote. I have an amendment on Senate Bill 591, which followed up on some discussions on Senate Bill 591, which followed up with the discussions that we had from the bill hearing, and I will share it. I mean, we have copies that people could have, and I'll just say what I'm looking at. I think it needs another week to marinate, Mr. Chairman, so that various advocates and others have a chance to look at it. But essentially what it tries to do is to take the goals of the original bill to see what can we do to enable the utilities to move towards certain kinds of generation and other and battery storage projects in particular, things that can be done right now. And is there a way to do it without upsetting the apple cart of the disjuncture between generation and distribution? So what I did is I looked at that section of law which enables the utilities to own up to 6% and boost that up to 10%. And what that will do is enable certain kinds of projects in which you're interested to potentially be part of that extra 4% of their energy needs. And then also you'll see that it strikes the 3% business about what can be fossil fuel or other kinds of generation and what the relationship to renewables, and says, look, you get your 10%. And then I think quite importantly, we have put really very artificial constraints on the kind of battery storage that the utilities could do. So what this does is it says, it used to say just behind the meter. Now it says no. What's being built now by utilities are rather large utility scale, 100 megawatt, 500 megawatts, even 1,000, as we see being built around the country. Batteries are getting cheap, very cheap, and it's the foremost tool we have in terms of shaving peak demand and really saving people money right away. So that would enable that, and because of the batteries, there's a wording change there, direct or indirect, and that takes care of what batteries can do. I think this will fulfill your interest in what you had in the original bill, and I think it's also something utilities would do and want to do and could address the cost issues very quickly. I think it would be important to have a week to talk with some of the advocates, Community Power Coalition, and so on and so forth, about some of the things here. But that's what it is. I just wanted to forecast it, and I'll see how things go. But that's the concept behind it, and trying to take your insights, Mr. Chairman, and get something that we could actually get done.
So that's Amendment 0616S.
Yep.
And do the utilities have a copy of that by any chance?
Yes, they do.
Do you mind saying anything on that? Do you have any comments? Any bumps or potholes that we need to fix?
No potholes I am aware of. For the record, Alec O'Mara, Director of External Affairs at Unitil. The statute in question within the amendment is the same statute that is what allowed us to build the Kingston Solar Array, which we have discussed previously within previous hearings here. It does, as Senator Waters said, it expands that cap from 6% to 10%. And potentially creates the opportunity to look at fuel neutral generation facilities that would be within the same spirit of that Kingston Array. So from our perspective, it could very well lead to some really interesting conversations in terms of what may or may not be possible in terms of this specific kind of load reducing facility that we have on our system already. And it's interesting. I will note that right now with the Kingston Array, that's a 5 megawatt facility. The 6% cap would be 18 megawatts on Unitil's system. So we're not near the cap right now, even with our existing facility. This would just simply increase that cap, which I think is in the spirit of what you wanted to do with your bill in terms of incentivize more local generation.
And the storage is a neat aspect of this, correct?
Yes, it is interesting. We actually built the Kingston Array with the potential to have storage attached to it. So it's something that we have looked at and considered. And again, whenever we look at those things, it's a matter of making sure that the benefits to our customers are there if we're going to pursue it.
And the storage would help out with peak demand?
Yeah, that's the general thinking in terms of what storage can do. It can do a variety of things. Peak demand is certainly one of those things. You charge the batteries at one time of day, and then you're able to release that, charge at a different time, which theoretically could be at a peak load period. That's one of the core values of the existing solar array, is that it is generating power during those peak periods, which then lowers the overall load for our system. And that's what provides a cost benefit for all of our customers, regardless of whether or not they're on a default service or not. So regardless of what your third-party provider is, that particular facility is providing value.
Questions at all?
I have
Yeah.
So, I had hoped that the 10% also might address really rather small modular reactors, and I believe that would be the case.
It is. I am not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert on what does and does not make sense from a nuclear reactor perspective on these AMR modular. My understanding is they can have very small megawatt levels. I think ultimately, from an interconnection standpoint, the 5 megawatt and then how many different 5 megawatt facilities of various fuels one could ultimately put onto the system. So this would take us from maybe being able to do like 6 Kingstons, if you will, to maybe being able to do 10 Kingstons or something to that effect. Again, not all solar, as this would have. That's one of the things that we talked about, in terms of fuel neutral. Is there a potential Goldilocks opportunity for us in terms of natural gas? We're a natural gas provider in the state as well. Maybe there's a location where we can provide firm gas capacity to a location that also makes sense on our electric system. That's something that's very interesting to us. Again, we have no such proposal or project in the works. I want to be very clear on that. But this is an opportunity for us to potentially look at those things.
So, perfect. Any other
Just to
questions?
follow up on that's why it's important to get rid of the 3% sentence in there as well, isn't it?
Agreed. That I think is more to the spirit of the original bill, which is to create fuel neutral opportunities for generation in the state.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Mike, you want to say anything, or you just nod yes, you like it? That's a thumbs up. Mark? No thoughts? That a no or a yes or just a level?
No problem.
Anybody?
It's Buddha in the back row.
Yeah. And Jody, I know you don't like it, or you do?
I'm
very neutral. Yeah. All right. Joshua? No.
Sorry, I will be very brief. Just in reviewing the statute where this lives, There is a requirement that it be located on the distribution system. So that will limit, and I think Mr. O'Meara sort of alluded to that, that will limit the size of any of these things to what can be connected into the district.
I didn't catch that.
Oh, I'm sorry. So within the statute this lives in, this amendment would be amending. There's references to distributed generation, and it's defined as technology or devices located on or interconnected to the local electric distribution system. So that would certainly act as a limiter as in terms of the size of these facilities. So I just wanted to point that out. Now I'm still digesting it, so but I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah.
So we could talk about whether we might want to change that a little bit. Yes.
I would need to check with folks back at the department. I don't know where having the utilities directly connect into the transmission system for a larger facility. I'm not well versed in that, so I wouldn't want to speak to that.
We'll work on that. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Josh. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
input. Is there anything else anybody wants to work on right now?
You want to do 599?
Which one?
599?
Which is,
Mine on the renewable energy fund?
yes, go ahead. Where is it?
Senator Waters was gracious enough to introduce it for me because I wasn't able to attend the hearing that day. I quickly reviewed the hearing report. I guess before I made a motion, is there a concern from the committee? I mean, this is sort of a carryover from fixing an issue in the last budget that occurred inadvertently.
Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. So, this fund has,
Before we, so you're making a motion to opt the pass?
I haven't made a motion yet. I thought maybe we could have a discussion before we do, if that's okay.
Yeah, you can, I guess.
Yeah.
Senator.
thank you. This fund has $967,000 in it. And the department is asking basically for $1 million to administer a fund that has less than that. That's my concern, is that it's adding bureaucracy to very little money.
Senator Waters?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We did hear in the hearing that yes, that's what's there now, but it gets replenished. And that they administer a whole lot more than this particular thing. So what it is that, that there is a fairly substantial amount of funding that gets replenished into that. It needs to be administered in various programs they do. But the mistake in the budget was not to specify that this is the intent for that $1 million written in the budget. So it really is it's a fix. The larger issue of the administrative costs and so on was justified because of the extent of programs, and $967,000 is not particularly relevant. It's at this moment, but yes, it gets replenished. And so that was what I thought we heard in the hearing.
I don't think it gets replenished that much. So I do have a concern about this $1 million.
Okay.
We're depositing $4 million annually into the general fund. House Bill 2 said we could keep, what was it, $1 million? One or two.
Clarifying this.
Yeah.
That's that million I'm trying to clarify.
Right. But there's just, my understanding is we're not replenishing it at a huge rate. And it just seems like a large administrative cost to me. That's all.
Senator Pearl?
I think Senator Waters explained it fairly well. I mean, we're trying to fix an issue that occurred inadvertently, and I respect your concern about it, but I think, this was, I think it's important to preserve the program and keep it in place. And I'm afraid that as I recall, Senator Waters, correct me if I'm wrong, this was our attempt at sort of keeping this in place so that the administration could continue on the other programs that they oversee. Am I correct on that? Yeah.
All right, is there a?
I'm gonna move on, pass.
Okay, second by Senator Waters. Further discussion? All in favor of SB 599FN?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Will you,
But I don't mind it though.
going on consent, move consent? Yep.
Consent by Senator Pearl, second by Senator McConkey. All in favor of consent? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none?
I'll take it out if you'd like.
All right. TP consent. Pearl.
Can I just mention something on 597, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
You know, there's a lot in there and good things, and a lot of issues are raised around it. I would like to recommend we hold this one for a while. And particularly to see if there's something that, you know, from the governor or from others about having a vehicle for something around affordability and performance-based rate making or other methods there. And if we just keep this for a little bit, we have a few more weeks, right?
I think you have about
So
three.
that
March 3rd, yeah, say about 3 weeks. if I'm
Yeah,
honest.
I think that if the Department of Energy or somebody else wants to come forward and think about, I mean, there's a lot of good pieces of that bill. I mean, there's a lot of good things. I think it doesn't work the way it is right now, the written here, but it might be useful to us to have.
Okay.
As long as you've got it now, we can see it happen when it comes up.
Anything else at this time that everybody's ready for? We'll hold off on, we'll exec some for the following week. Don't do a lot of bills, so we can do that. So with that, I think we're going to move on in.
Motion to come out of exec.
Thank you. Seconded by Senator Abard. All in favor of moving out of exec?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. All right, and we're gonna close the hearing. 10 minutes left. Okay. So we gotta get rid of some of these items in folder.